comes from a lifetime of connection with higher level consciousnesses, past life connections, and after death experiences. We all know there's more than meets the eye in this world, and our guest today on Rogue Ways knows it, writes about it, speaks about it, and helps heal emotional and physical trauma in others using her psychic, direct download, and entity guided communications, her understandings, and her wisdom. Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, it's a pleasure to have you back on Rogue Ways. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, thanks. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. I think it's been almost exactly a year, so we didn't plan it to be that way, but it's kind of cool.
That is very cool.
Yes. Well, before we get started, I just want to say some powerful healing ceremonies, readings, and sound.
Wasted, programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are mourn. Just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed. Disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of all nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer because they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. What an exceptionally perfect time again to get a dose of the mega good feels and wisdom that comes from a lifetime of connection with higher level consciousnesses, past life connections, and after death experiences. We all know there's more than meets the eye in this world, and our guest today on Rogue Ways knows it, writes about it, speaks about it, and helps heal emotional and physical trauma in others using her psychic, direct download, and entity-guided communications, her understandings, and her wisdom. Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, it's a pleasure to have you back on Rogue Ways. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, thanks. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. I think it's been almost exactly a year, so we didn't plan it to be that way, but it's kind of cool.
That is very cool.
Yes. Well, before we get started, I just want to say some powerful healing ceremonies, readings, and sound healings are taking place daily over here. And if your soul is calling you to let go, transform, and uplift, give yourself that gift and reach out at rogueways.org, where you can also find my books and transformational orgone pendants, or join guided, channeled meditations twice weekly, and so much more. So I can't wait to connect more deeply if you're out there wanting more connection. And Mary Helen Hensley, the pointless question of the episode that I wanted to ask you today is, can a person's fear be beneficial?
Absolutely.
It's not that pointless, is it?
Absolutely.
Dive right in. I wanted to get your input on this because I've been having this, feeling lately like everything that we see as like sort of negative or bad is actually serves a purpose in some way, right?
Absolutely. Indeed. Yeah. It's a great question. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Look, if it exists within our realm, it's beneficial. And I'm that weirdo who's always talking about the fact when people are like, oh my God, I went somewhere and I had entity attachments and all that. And I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
It might've been super uncomfortable and extremely disruptive, but there's never, ever, ever a time when that's not poignant in the individual's journey, because it's the kind of thing where if it wasn't serving a purpose, then everybody would have them or nobody would have them. Right. And so you can't just kind of pick and choose buffet style what's good for you and what's not good for you. Every single thing presents an opportunity for your growth and evolution and, the unfolding of who you are. Fear being one of the biggies, it's one of my favorites. And boy, aren't we dealing with an awful lot of that right now.
Yeah.
It's flavor of not even the month. It's the flavor of the last 24 months.
Yeah. Many months. And maybe it'll start to shift out now and we'll start to heal some of that. Because like you said, I think, there's a reason why these things happen and why they come up, and individually we're dealing with that, right? But this is like a mass level transformation. How do you view what's going on right now in the world?
Well, I love a good psychosis, and what we're dealing with right now is a mass level psychosis. And, immediately people hear that word and they think negative, so mass psychosis just means that, the intellect and the emotional state of a large body of people, mass psychosis is under construction. It's under change. So psychosis, for some people, they're like, oh no, I had somebody in my life who went through a psychosis and they went crazy. Did they actually go crazy? Because I have a lot of people in my circle who have actually been through some varying degrees of psychosis, certainly loads of people I've worked with. And it became one of the most transformative experiences of their life, teaching them, getting them out of a situation that otherwise fear would have kept them anchored to. And it took something that literally it's like when, have you ever seen somebody faint and they're in such a state, they're either so physically ill or they are so emotionally wound up that all of a sudden they just drop and they hit the floor. And it's like a great reset. Mm-hmm. And, because they're just like out of control and the body just goes, yeah, scene, cut. And a psychosis can be the same way, where it's just that the mind is spinning and you get caught up in this whole human thing to the point where, you're just like off running naked through the garden, or you're, or you're down every single rabbit hole on YouTube that you can go down, and it creates this spinning. And ultimately there's going to be a wall, nobody gets out of it alive. There's going to be a wall, and the individual hits, and they have an opportunity there to either continue forward in fear, which then tends to unfold in, what we see in the mental health care profession as people who are going, either down the road of meds, or they're going into deep treatment, or, or they're dealing with suicidal tendencies, whatever that direction has. So that's the fear-based option. And then you have this option, which is you go, oh, whew, whoa, that was like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Ooh, glad I got out of that one. And then you have the chance to reset and restructure your entire journey. I've seen plenty of people in extremely high, very well-paid positions, where they're at the top of their game and all this, who just spun out into a psychosis because they literally, as we say here in Ireland, they'd lost the run of themselves and what was important. They were so far off their own path, their own designated journey, that they had to use what was out there in order to create that altered mental state, physical state, emotional state, to get themselves back on track.
Yeah.
Some people like me, we do it with a car accident, I didn't have to go down the psychosis, or I think I was already in the psychosis, but I just needed the car accident to get myself back on. Other people do it with cancer. Some people do it with, with a child who comes in with special needs, and it changes their entire world. I mean, there are so many amazing ways. And what's the first instinct when things aren't exactly like we thought they were supposed to be, or we've been told? It's fear. And fear has a resonance like anything else does. Fear has its own little set of tunes, its own music. It hangs out around 396 hertz, and it's so amazing. And just like with anything else in the human body and all of our experiences with homeopathy, you've got vibrational homeopathy, where if you go in and you match that fear frequency, the person opens up, they can breathe, and they can go, oh, okay, let me just go back and retrieve that little piece of myself that I left X, Y, or Z, and bring it back into present time. And that frequency, that 396, can do that. The interesting thing, though, that I have seen now is that the vast majority of people that I'm working with at the moment are so full. They're so super saturated. The water table is like you couldn't get one more drop in. And because there are certain things that hang out around 396 hertz, or fear, guilt, grief, shame, anger, self-loathing, they all are right just around that same little resonance there. And so because the vast majority of the population is so full, what's happening is we're seeing a crisscrossing where people can't discern between one and the other. And you might have examples in your own life, or somebody, you're like, oh, this sounds really familiar. Where somebody could be driving down the road and they, they're sitting at the traffic light, and then they take off and someone zooms past and almost clips them, but don't. The appropriate reaction in that response would be fear, right? Woo! Next thing, they're sitting on the side of the road and they're uncontrollably sobbing, and they're grieving the loss of their grandmother. Or they could be in the grocery store and someone says, oh, hi, I haven't seen you since you lost your sister. I'm so glad to see you. And they become enraged. And so this is that crisscrossing due to supersaturation around that vibration of 396 hertz. And so when someone is submerged and resonating in that fear space, you're not just inviting fear, you're inviting all the other things, all your grief. Is that a bad thing? No, because it might be bringing it up to the surface and going, hey, can we just deal with this already? So I think this is an extraordinary time to be alive. It's so transformative. It's like it's on a silver platter. You know, if you want to chuck it, if you want to get rid of it, you're ready to, you know, to spring up out of it and move on. Now's the time to do it. This was the bus to catch.
Yeah. We're on the super fast train, the bullet train to emotional and spiritual wellness.
Exactly.
Well, this is what I just went through an illness, and it was quite a long one. It was kind of harsh. And I just remember that was a lot of what I was reminding myself the whole time, is to not look at my body like it failed and like it let me get sick and like why me and all of this, but to just say, cool, my body's doing it. Like we're healing this, and whatever this is transforming. And like this was the moment to do whatever that was. And it might even be better than, I might come out the other side better than I was before even. Like I don't know what my body's doing, but I know it's in service of me, so I'm just like congratulating it and like loving it through this. And I feel like if we did that with everything, if I could do that with all the things that happen to me, like how much better that would be, right? To just encourage yourself and just say, yep, this is where you're at right now, and this is where it's good, like you're dealing with something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I had a patient ask me just yesterday, what a great question you started this with, because this is such a theme right now. And she's been coming to me. She's, you know, into maintenance and taking care of her body, and she's in great shape. And for 2 solid years, every time she came in, she's like, I'm not going to get it. I am not getting it. And I was like, be careful what you say.
Putting a lot of energy into that thing.
I saw her yesterday and hadn't seen her for a month. And I was like, I missed you, you know, 2 weeks ago. And she was like, and I was like, yes. And she goes, I got it. And I was like, and she goes, I want to talk to you about this because this was the most bizarre experience I've ever had. And I said, go ahead. And she goes, you can't even begin to believe the shame I felt. And I went, really? Talk to me about that. And she goes, I had myself so worked up. She said, I've taken my kids to school sicker than I was. She said, I really just wasn't sick. You know, like I had a stuffed up nose. My test was positive. I got a sore throat for a day. You know, my kids had it and they were running around the place. And she goes, I really just wasn't that sick, but I was consumed with fear. And so she starts tearing up when she's telling me. Her hand started to shake. And I was like, this is crazy, but crazy good, because she's now all of a sudden going, oh, and I said, how long have you been saying to me you weren't going to get this? Oh, how long is this going on? I suppose the last 2 years. That's a long time to invest in the old bank of fear. And she was like, oh, yeah. And it was amazing watching her talk about how terrified she was. I said, would you ever been terrified over a head cold like that? Never. No, of course not. But she said, I didn't realize, you know, I spent so much time saying it wasn't going to happen. And I didn't realize that all that time I spent on social media, listening to the news, all that, it got in there. And she said, and then I felt so mad at myself and so ashamed, but terrified. And I went, this is vibration in action. You know, this is how it works. And she wasn't physically ill, but she was emotionally in terrible bother. And so when, you know, I've said from day one, when our pandemic began, you know, this is a physical, a spiritual, emotional, and it's time for people to clean house. It's presenting such an incredible opportunity for us. Are there some people who chose to leave? Sure. There's some people who chose to leave every day via car accidents, heart attacks, you know, suicide, whatever it is. It's just when you put that lens on it, that magnifying glass. And it was so interesting watching it come down from this kind of cosmic to this global, to this national, to this town, to my office, and watching this one individual sit in front of me and go, oh my gosh. And I said, okay, so now instead of sitting in that shame or that fear that you failed somehow, you're sitting here freaking talking to me right now. You won. Do you get that? You won. And there's nothing wrong with your body dealt with this. You won. It's not what you think. Your body wasn't going to get it, because if you didn't get it, and then this really got her, because I went, imagine if you and your husband went to a restaurant, and let's say you both ordered the chicken cordon bleu, and there was a new chef, and that chicken wasn't quite cooked well enough, right? And you both ate that chicken, and, you had a couple of glasses of wine, and you went home, and around midnight, your husband starts to profusely sweat, and he is now getting the body ache, and he is now on his hands and knees, and he's throwing up, and you're not. Which one of you is well? And she goes, oh, me, I guess. I said, oh, no. You both have the same poison in your body. His body is going into immediate action, all hands on deck. It's raising the temperature. It's fighting the bacteria. It's dealing with it. Yours is dragging it out. And then imagine you've been feeling under the weather for the next week. And you're like, you're never going to attribute it to the chicken because you didn't get sick when you ate the chicken, because we're so conditioned to think, it wasn't that moment, but you're unwell for an entire week. Your body is sluggish. You feel nauseated, but you never get sick. You feel like you're going to, have to go to the toilet, but you don't. Nothing is happening other than you feel like crap. So who was better off in that situation? Your husband's body outdid you, Yeah. And she was like, oh. And I said, so if you finally came face to face with that which you feared, that which shall not be named, it's like Voldemort.
Right.
If you came face to face with that, and you became ill, and you got to experience illness in a different way, but you've been conditioned to listen over the last 2 solid years about this is going to happen, and you're literally expecting this to happen. You're intensifying your interaction with the actual virus, so you're literally creating, and she's like, oh, yeah, you're creating that experience. And it really kind of hit home there. And so, it's interesting what fear can do when it's, because fear then so quickly turns into like some kind of guilt or some kind of shame. I've had the vid, I don't know how many times, I got my hands all over people 24/7. I consider myself wildly successful in regards to the fact that my body has done great with it. I'm like, I'm immune to 47 different variants at this stage.
Right. That's what, we got it like right at the beginning before they ever even mentioned the word out loud, and no one was talking about it. It was a couple months before that. I'm relatively positive that's what we had. And here we are almost two and a half years later getting it again. And I had some of that too. Like, well, I already had this. Like, what's wrong with my body that it didn't like remember? And I just had to do that same thing. Like, no, I'm just glad my body can deal with it effectively. And like you said, I'm actually well. And I was thinking of the same thing, and it was reminding me of like, when we're alcoholing or drugging and, we're doing it a lot, our bodies get used to it. And like, we don't feel sick anymore. We don't get as hungover anymore. And like, that's not a good thing though.
That's not a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. That friend that you palled around with in college, who's like, I never get a hangover. They got a problem.
Yeah. There's a reason.
Yeah. So it's funny how people's reactions, and then you remember that this thing has now traveled the globe. It's been watered down. It's, and starting off as something that I am 100% convinced was genetically engineered. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we've run so many frequency tests on it, and the stuff that comes up is just ridiculous.
Wow.
So we know, let's just say we know. Okay. So as it travels around and it goes from Bob to Mary to Jane to Jack, it's picking up. And remember, we're dealing with something that's working with DNA. Now you've got a whole population that's being injected with messenger RNA. And so there's all these little factors and variants. So whatever little shed or little throw off, or, the off-Broadway edition that you got, your body is going to have to sit with that. It's going to have to cope. Your body didn't let you down. It didn't get the same thing twice. What's fascinating for me is I've been testing myself the entire way through because I'm so active with the public. Not the antigen test, but the antibody. And so as far as modern medicine tells us now, and, when you have the IgG and the IgM, one is like the firefighters that arrive on the scene. They're the crisis care. And then the other is kind of our long-term care where we're nursing ourselves back to health. So you have this kind of immunity, one that's instant that lasts for just a short blast of time, and then you've got this kind of long-term team immunity going on in the body. So when I got it on the 13th of March, 2020. I ended up starting every 3 months doing whenever, or I guess it was probably 6 months I did my first antibody test. And then I started right after because I wanted to keep track of this thing. Yeah. So I am now I'm almost at 100 and however many weeks that is. 52 and 52, 104. Yeah. So I'm over 110 weeks now of my first line defense immunity. Now, this is what's bizarre. Well, that's not possible. What do you mean it's not possible? Well, that's we're confronting something brand new here. Yeah. And all of a sudden, the human body is reacting differently. And I consider that a wild success. Yeah. Oh, well, that means you have some kind of chronic illness. No, that doesn't, because I feel fabulous. If I had a chronic thing going on, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be feeling well. And I know what the itises and the isms and the encephalitises and the myelo, la, 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 I've had them all, you know? So I know what it feels like to be chronically unwell, and I am not chronically unwell, yet I am hosting my first line defense team for the last 110 plus weeks. And this is incredible. Yeah. Do you know? So it's like,
I was thinking too, is that whatever the plans of whoever might have been with all of this, I just have so much faith in the human body and that our soul is actually in charge of that. And that it's saying like, oh, you're going to throw that at me. Well, I mean, nature has an answer for everything. Everything. So I'm just like, yeah, we'll figure something out. Our body will be fine. And if not, we'll go to some other body in some other place or whatever. Like, that's also fine. But I just think it's going to be okay. And I feel like what you're sharing is exactly that. Like, we're evolving, maybe in response to this, but we're evolving. So good.
Totally. Like by the millisecond. So now you have an understanding of that, and I have an understanding of that. But imagine people who don't have an interest in that and don't really have an understanding of that, and all they've got is the fear that's being constantly fueled. Now people start dripping in terms that like long haul, this is going to be a permanent scenario and all this, and people begin to embrace that, and then all of a sudden, I felt good, and then all of a sudden my nose got stuffed up again, and hey, just a little reminder. It's February and everything's starting to bloom here in Ireland, and we're approaching allergy season. Yeah. I've had allergies my whole life. That doesn't mean that I am, rocking the Roni again. It's like, I'm swelling up. I've got my same old trusty hawthorn and dogwood and allergies going on. Like, and then we get so convinced because it's classic marketing. You keep telling somebody something. It's like, I have a joke over here in Ireland. One of their favorite things to do, people will come in and they feel the need to go, oh, you look really tired today. Cheers, mate. Thanks for that. Because if I look like that, I probably feel like that and really don't need the reinforcement. But anyway, let's say you didn't feel tired and you just were puffy because you ate some, MSG last night or something. Like, you're just a little puffy under the eyes or whatever. Now you're kind of like looking in the mirror when you get a chance going, God, do I look tired? And it's that constant reinforcement, and then, oh gosh, well, Betty Sue down the road had the long haul. I wonder if I have that. Yeah, I can't say I'm feeling the best now. Or you're going into a situation where you're being tested every day. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I'm like, this is nuts. So I think that the fear factor, we have the X factor. There needs to be a show called The Fear Factor now, so we can actually talk about this.
Yeah.
It's insane. So it's insane, but relevant, because really the only way to change it is to expose it, to see it for what it is, and to thank it for showing up, because only for it would people be recognizing. There are people who are so exhausted from being, you only have so much adrenaline, Yeah. And your capacity to make it even get sluggish after it's been in overdrive for so long. And it's like, that's your battery pack, that's your reserve. And we've been living off of our reserves for 2 years now. And so it's really interesting how people think that they can just keep going without feeding themselves with positivity or fresh air or sunshine or proper supplements or good food or healthy intake, and I wrote a chapter in a book recently about resilience, and it's called Mental Health for Millennials. The publishing company that I work with, Book Hub Publishing, has this. I'm actually editing books 6, in the series, but this
Uh-huh.
past book was all about mental health for millennials, and it was around resilience. And my whole chapter was like, you are resilience. If you're able to read this, you made it.
Yeah.
You know, might have been bumpy. You might have done it in your pajamas. You might have had 3 showers in the last 6 months, but you made it. And that is resilience. And whatever it took for you to get here, no matter what people's judgments were about what you did or didn't do, how you didn't show up for yourself, if you were, if you put on 50 pounds or if you lost 10 or if you changed your job or got a different job or, left your partner or got a new partner or whatever, you did everything possible to adapt to the situation. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Overcoming something that brings potential hazard, harm, and is surrounded in fear. The only way to deal with that is via adapting. So the human body can adapt. Once you keep it fed and watered, it's pretty good, doing its thing.
Yeah.
And so like this thing where people have been living in this constant state of fear and they don't realize they have such bad adrenal fatigue. Like it's incredible. And now in my realm, with people who are working in the healing arts, I'm dealing with a lot of colleagues who have compassion fatigue. Yeah. They are so exhausted from trying to hold people up who are sitting in a space of fear for so long that they're just ready to collapse now. And this is where I'm seeing the fallout. Yeah. This is where I'm gathering all my healer friends and I'm going, now more than ever, we've got to take care of each other because we're wrecked. It was like, oh, we made it, and people are coming out going, oh, yeah, that didn't really make a lot of sense now. And it doesn't seem to make sense now. And they're getting on with their lives like nothing happened. And we're all like this.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
What? But you can be sure the very second the barrier comes down, they'd be the first ones to jump again. And so this is why I'm saying to my friends who are vibing in a space of holding space and healing one another and helping to heal other people who are in those spaces. Now's the time to retract and retreat and really get into the self-care and build ourselves back up again. There'll be multiple waves from here on. They've just changed the board game. Yeah. They're new rules. And so we need to be extra conscious and careful with ourselves because fear will burn out your adrenals faster than anything else.
Yeah, I love it. I don't love the fear, but I love the self-care aspect of the recharging time, and really focusing on that. We talk about it a lot, like self-care. And I feel like everybody does the same thing where they're like, oh, that means taking a bath. Like relaxing in the bath with a candle. It can be that, right? But it can be so many other things too, like planting a garden or going on a walk or anything you like where you just get to relax or pause or just be about yourself instead of other people. And
that's it right there.
Yeah.
You've just said it right there. That's the trick. That's the secret of the saints. It's not an activity.
Yeah.
It's not something else where you're doing, taking a bath and relaxing. That should be like kind of normal behavior. It's not something I've seen in a long time because, I have a very busy schedule. But what I'm having to do now is I'm taking 1 day a week now where I switch my phone completely off. There's a pile of messages afterwards. Because what I was finding as well, it's like I work as a healer. That's what I do, and I do podcasts and I do, I write these books and I do all this stuff. But what's happening is the people contacting me for fear-based questions, I could get maybe 3,000 after this, Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it's just, and that's everyone that I do. So then I find as a healer, there's no way. I'd spend the next 50 years answering every one of those. So I'm having to find a way to give my healing in a different way because I literally can't do the one-on-one anymore. I can't even believe I'm saying it out loud, but that's the truth. That's the conclusion that I've come to. And I'm trying to find a way to, I'm going to start doing a show, like my own little, Mary Helen's World show where I'm just interacting with people and hopefully answering questions and doing it well enough and good enough to where I'm covering the stuff that people would be asking me one-on-one because I'm a healer for a reason. I have that soul. I have that kind of compassion. I have, because there are other people who are just absolutely not interested in other people's problems,
Right.
and that's why they do what they do. I do what I do because I do actually care.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's been amped up to the point where the tidal wave of requests, and they're time sensitive, and this one could be dying by next week. And this, I went, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What, I can't do this anymore. So rather than being terrified of, oh my gosh, I can no longer meet my needs, I just change it up. Yeah. That's how you move from fear into trust. Yeah. And I just finished editing a book for a dear friend. Her name is, Aisling Fitzgibbons. She was in Ireland. She used to be called the Girl Against Fluoride, and she would go out and campaign and talk about fluoride stuff. Like, she'd appear on the beach in nothing with a sign, and she started getting national headlines and all, bringing awareness to the fact that the water here in Ireland was fluoridated. Yeah. And people didn't even know what that meant or what the ramifications of that were, or whatever. And I just finished editing her new book, which is called Moving from Fear to Trust. Nice. And I'm like, this is such a relevant time for that. Because it really is, that's what it's all about. It, to say, imagine as someone whose life revolves around being there and helping people, and to say out loud, guys, I love you guys so much, and I want to share everything that I know and everything that I have. But the idea of trying to meet everybody one-on-one anymore, I can't do that and be, and honor myself. Yeah. I can't, and it's, oh my God. But yeah, I can write books. I can talk. I can do all of that. And it was a wonderful, I've been doing it for 30 years. Yeah. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And that's what this whole thing did for me. It brought a gift to each of us. Yeah. And, one of them was, hey, man, this body is rocking it, as banged up as it is. And it doesn't matter. Like, you want to go toe for toe for ailments and for comorbidities and all that. I don't even that whole argument, the comorbidity thing, please. Being human is a comorbidity.
Yeah, seriously. That's really, and I'm point.
Like, this confirms for me, hands down, you come here to do what you came here, and you will leave when you are finished. Yeah. End of story. And you don't have to worry about who you're helping, who you're not helping, who you're disappointing, who you're not. You have to come here and you have to be true to yourself. The way that you get through this game is that every time something pops up and presents you with an opportunity to change, I'm literally giving myself my own lecture that I needed to hear today.
I love
Thanks,
it.
me.
Yes.
Really, because this is something I've been struggling with. And it's that, moving out of something you've been doing for a very long time, especially when it deals with holding people into, bringing people into a space. But I can do it bigger now. Yeah. I can do it better than I'm doing it the way that I am doing it, without using up my vessel.
Yeah. That's so funny, because this one question has prompted all of this. Your people have been dealing with this. People you're editing for you've been dealing with this. You're giving yourself this talk. And I was also just reflecting today in the shower on how I left teaching and how it was really hard for me, because I felt like this is the way I'm helping the world. This is what I came here to do, is to help the world in the best way I can, in the most direct way I can, for the next, not just 7, but infinite generations, if I can, like whatever I can do. And teaching was the way I did that. And then to leave that, it was very similar, right? And I had a lot
Really? You really left teaching? Did you really?
Right. No. And everyone likes to remind me of that. And I'm so grateful for it. But that's exactly it, right? I went to this new way of doing it, and there's more people I can reach in more direct ways. And maybe that does, who cares about how much and measuring whatever, but it is better for me. And therefore it is just better for everyone else too, right? I'm not destroying myself in what I'm doing anymore. I have much more balance with it. And so I love that this is just like the theme, and I'm sure there's everyone listening to this is also resonating with like, yeah, how can I better be in balance with myself and still continue to give what I came here to give, but also receive what I came here to receive.
Exactly. And I'm sitting here listening and I'm going, yeah, okay, I got it. Eureka.
Yes.
Because everything I'm about is vibe, it's all about frequency, vibration and all. And so like, if you are moving out of that, having to be in the one-to-one scenario where you're dealing with every individual problem, it's kind of like with, with my audiobook where, you're telling a story and it's backed with these healing frequencies.
Oh my God.
So that anything.
That audiobook is so amazing and beautiful.
Did you like it?
I loved it. I'm so grateful that I got to enjoy that. And anyone can enjoy that now, right? That's out and available for people?
Yeah.
Oh, everyone listening to this has to go get it right now. I'm guessing from Amazon. Understanding is the New Healing, and get the audiobook version. I don't even know if it is not in another form besides audiobook.
It is. It's in paperback as well, but the audio is
got to do audio.
To die for.
Yeah. Tell them why. Tell them why.
Okay. So, Understanding is the New Healing is really the book that I always wanted to do, because when I went with Simon & Schuster and they did Promised by Heaven. Promised by Heaven is actually 3 different books.
Oh, wow.
It's my first book, Promised. It's Circles of Light, and it's The Land Beyond the River. And what they did was they took my story and they're like, people are going to want to hear your story. And I was like, no, it's not about me, And they took that and they made Promised by Heaven, but they extracted all of the stories that I'd shared about other people. And so over the course of time, I had all of these other stories that were coming from different healing sessions, and literally it just ran the gamut of every possible scenario you could think of. And I was like, that's the book I always wanted to tell, the stories of my fellow travelers. And so these were healing sessions that I'd done with these people, and not for, very careful to say to people, look, don't put anything on me, because this is what happens. You get inundated with the healing. You're the only way I'm going to be able to heal. No, I'm not. This is me. I'm the window washer.
Yes.
Wiping it clean so you can find your own way out. Right. And so, when I'm telling a story in the book, regardless of whatever, that story was, okay, let's pick one, for instance. A guy comes to me. He thought that his horrendous panic attacks, and I mean, they were horrible, were coming from the fact that he'd called out to see his elderly mother and she dropped dead right in front of him. And he had no control, And so he's thinking that he's starting to freak out, and like his family was like, oh my God, please, like his adult children. I mean, these are kids with their own kids. Yeah. They'd be like, he'd call, where are you? I'm just driving home from work. Where are you? Where? I heard there was an accident, Dad. That's like an hour and a half away from here, and it was really to the point where like he was driving them bananas. So he comes to me and he was like, I'm going to lose my family. Like literally, they can't live like this. And I understand that they can't, but I can't seem to get a grip on this fear. And so he was saying to me, I don't know, but, I was there. My mom died in front of me. And I went, no, this was a case where it was a past life scenario. So the thing that looks the most obvious, and he was just like, it's got to be that. And I went, that was your trigger, not your cause. That's your symptom, not your cause. Yeah. So we go back in, and suddenly this story just begins to unfold. And I see these things like a movie in the mind. And he's working in this school, and it was called the Sandhurst School, and it was in the UK. And there's a German bomber flying over in this thing. And I'm telling him all this. We went and looked it up, and it really happened. Wow. And so, but I'd already told him all the story. And, I was describing that the bomber was so low, you could actually see the swastika on the plane. And so next thing, this school gets bombed. He happened to be like a maintenance man. He was working in the school or teacher. I can't remember what he was doing, but this bomb drops and he's got all his kids in the classroom, and boom, it comes down. He's trapped and his legs are trapped and he's dying, but he can see all the little children around him are dying as well. And he can't get to them. So his legs are pinned, and his last visions in that life are of these kids screaming and they're dying, and he can't help them. This was what triggered it. Yeah. It wasn't his mother's death. So there is a frequency that goes with that 396 hertz. But if you couple that with 417 hertz, which would be the equivalent of going, okay, this happened in my past. It's like we are like, okay, yeah, that was really painful, but I wouldn't change the experience because the wisdom I have from that. That's 417 hertz. This is where you take that fear and that guilt and that shame and that grief, and then you put the cherry on top of the cake with the 417, which says, okay, this is part of my history, and I'm going to go ahead and put that book back on the shelf. And if I need it, I'll take it back down again and I'll open up that book of wisdom, as opposed to staying in that fear frequency where it's going to sit and rob you. It's like a slow leak in your tire. It's going to rob you every day because there's a little piece of you that's stuck there. And that's exactly what was happening. That piece of him was stuck there. So frequency can act like soul retrieval. It's like vibrational shamanism. Like you're bringing that piece that somebody left in the past of themselves back into present time. So this book is full of those kind of stories. And so when people are listening, do they have to have died in the Sandhurst school in that story? No, they could have had a past life or concurrent life scenario where that exact type thing happened, because we go through so many different aspects of stories. And some people get stuck in this one and don't get stuck in this one. And so by giving a wide variety of stories to choose from, there's all these different frequencies that when someone's listening to the book, they're immersing themselves in that frequency and getting the chance to actually heal on the spot from that.
That's exactly what I was feeling. When I was listening to it, I'd be like driving and listening to it. And I'm like, yeah, like this is so good. Because I could tell that my soul was like, ooh, a little piece of me also resonates with that. And I'm also letting that go now, or looking at it in a new way, or shifting it a little bit. And those sound frequencies that you've added to it, those are just facilitating it all. And it's so beautiful. It's just such a cool, and they're short little bits too. So you can just pick one and listen to it like all the way to the store or something even. And it's just really cool. I love it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
it was it's amazing. And do you know what's so funny? Do you remember the story that was in there about the Jack the Ripper story?
Yeah,
I haven't seen her. So guys, just a quick overview of this. This was amazing. This lady is brought into my office surrounded by a literal posse of her family, because she had been she developed a sudden and immediate and horrific agoraphobia. She could not go out in public. She dropped her kids off at school one day, and then she pulls up to the store. She had to leave the car running to run into the store for fear that something was going to happen. This happened out of nowhere. She used to travel everywhere. She's a mom, and there was no sign of this before. And now all of a sudden she can't leave her own home. 2 years later, her mother comes to me and says, can you do anything? I said, well, she'll try, So the only way they were able to get her out of the house was to surround her with people. And they literally walked her to the door like this. So she comes in and she's like, I don't know what you think you can do for me in an hour. I'm grateful for you trying or whatever. And I was like, let's see. And so I get her on, and it was immediate. The smells were, horrific. And so this lady, the voices said her name was Martha Tabram. They named her Martha Tabram. And she had been found in the bottom of a stairwell with stab wounds and all this. But what was interesting, when we uncovered this story and I'm telling her this, she goes, gosh, that's so weird. I actually feel really sorry for her. Well, me, I guess you're saying. And I went, yeah. And she's like, okay, well, thanks for trying. And she picks up her boots and she goes up to my waiting room, and the office was closed that day. It was just us there. And she's putting on her boots and she looks up and she goes, God, that's bizarre. Doesn't it sound like Jack the Ripper? And I went, oh, it does actually. Sorry.
Okay. Many of us are in the same boat right now. My voice is still like clarifying from everything.
Oh yeah. And she goes, doesn't that sound like Jack the Ripper? And I went, ooh, it does actually. And I can't say I know anything about the actual victims or whatever, but yeah, it kind of does sound like that. And she goes, well, look, thank you so much for trying, and I really appreciate it. And she gives me this big hug and walks out the door. And she's all the way down the sidewalk before, she hasn't even realized she's just left the place by herself. Here's her family out in the car, And that was the end of it. She walked into my office the other day. I haven't seen her in, I think that was probably like 2009 that happened. I don't know. And I hadn't seen her since. And it was so amazing. She goes, you know how weird it was that I was reading the story and I went, that was me. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So that is, I love that story too, because that resonates with people who've had something that came out of nowhere. And everyone can relate to that, where there's no explanation. The doctor has no diagnosis. There's no reason whatsoever this should have happened. And this is when these kind of stories can become so relevant. So the individual doesn't even have to go and hash up all the old past life stories and all this. It's just knowing that it was in another realm, at another, and it's an interdimensional story that's left some dirty footprints on your nice white carpet and you need to clean it up.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay.
And you just accept that, and it just releases, and you can see, like, I loved that one because the change was so immediate for her. Like you said, she didn't even notice it. Because I think sometimes people receive these healings and sometimes they do notice it really. They're like, wow, all this emotion released. I was crying. I had this and this symptom. And so it was really easy to see. And then other times it's like that where you can just sort of like, it's so natural because that was your natural state. You just got back to it, right?
Exactly.
I love
and
that.
It turns out the reason the whole thing happened to her was because she had just turned the age that Martha Tabram was, who she had been.
Yeah.
She had just turned the same age, and it triggered an alarm. Danger, danger, you're getting ready to die. So she had this overwhelming sense of, if I leave my home, I'm going to die.
Wow.
Like, what do you say to the GP? Like, here, and they're like, here's a Xanax, what does that do?
Right. It just shuts you up a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's
so.
What
Yeah, that's what the whole book is about.
I love that type of healing for exactly that reason too. Like you said earlier, like this other experience you had was just sort of the trigger or the rehashing of it, right? But the root of it could be in this other life, and you and I both address those types of things, and that source of whatever it is really what has to be addressed. And I love that there's so many different modalities that all serve that same purpose of that sort of soul retrieval type energy, or just, going to the source, however you want to say it, label it, whatever tools you want to use to do it. That's what has to happen. And we don't do that in medicines and allopathy, and we're real good at symptoms and we're not real good at sources.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, and we want the quick fix.
Yeah. The easy quick fix.
Yeah. That's the, and that again can be the relevance of the long haul aspect of what we've just gone through. I did something I was talking the other day. I had to go down. I was just overwhelmed's not the word. I was just full up. And there's a place on the coast, the West Coast here in Ireland, called the Burren. It looks like the moon, it's like a lunar landscape, but it's all limestone. And I've always gone there just to go and get my feet and my hands on the rocks when I need to give something over. Mm-hmm. And I was just really, really full because it's been a lot, for anybody under any circumstances, it's been a lot. For those of us who are dealing with people in a doctor or healer capacity, it's been a lot, and so the month of January, I had a lot of loss. I had a lot of loss where people just decided it was time to go. I had some, suicides from people I would have been quite close to, and it was just a lot. And so I needed to go down to the river and pray, only it was the ocean and it was rocks. Yeah. And I just went and just grounded myself there. And it was funny because it was on Groundhog Day.
Oh, wow.
And I laughed because I was like, man, this is so relevant because, when the groundhog came out and saw his shadow, which means, oh no, 6 more weeks of bad weather. And I'm going, how I kind of see that? It's like the groundhog comes out, sees the shadow and goes, you know what? I'm not quite done yet.
Yeah.
And I need to go back in. I just saw my shadow self and I see some things that need a little tweaking. I'm not quite ready to emerge yet. And that's kind of how I felt about that. It was just, I needed to go and sit with my shadow self, sit with the fact that I was sad. I'm up there trying to lift everybody else up. And I loved these people too. And I was sad and I was full and I was trying to digest that and be a mother and pay the rent and, get the grocery store. And I needed to sit back and acknowledge that. And it was really interesting that it happened on that Groundhog Day. It's one of my favorite holidays because it's that totally celebrate the shadow self day.
I love that.
Yeah. So it was pretty incredible. So I think this is really a great time for us for reflection and for acknowledgement. And I think that long haul aspect is really important because we have, for however long pharmaceuticals have been in control, for however long, this kind of build up to this world of everything is instantaneous has been going on. which is not, it didn't just happen yesterday, and it didn't just happen with social media. This has been many decades in the making. And a lot of people are only just waking up to that fact. And so this idea of wanting things instantaneously, including our own healing and evolution, I think it's really great that we do have something that has our attention, that has a long haul capacity to it, because it makes us stop and think, ooh, wait a second, because these folks who aren't getting over this, maybe I need to eat a little better. Maybe I need to drink a little more water. Oh gosh, no, I don't take any vitamin D and I live in a country with no sunshine. Let me, and they're starting to think about these things that they need to do, the responsibility that they need to take, because nobody seemingly has any answers. And so you don't have anyone to answer to, but yourself. You've got to go find your own way out of this. So I actually kind of really like that aspect of what's going on right now. And it's making people ask questions finally. They're asking questions about their bodies and their health that I've never been asked before. And I've been doing this for years. Wow. They're all of a sudden interested. And, it took a global pandemic to make them take a look at their habits and their behaviors. And, it took a lot of people screaming and shouting, going, sorry, I've been taking care of myself. I don't want to be punished for other people. Just because somebody else is in a crisis doesn't mean I have to be. And it's also really shone a light on the fact that we're all expected to fall under one model of living, which is allopathic healthcare. And people are beginning to break away. You are definitely seeing, and they're like, oh no, the two-tier society. I'm like, okay, I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
It's not just two-tier, guys. There's multiple tiers to this thing. Because we're all at different states of evolution and understanding about how it all works.
Yeah.
So, my friends who are psychic, my friends who are, who have, see other beings, who have the visits and have, like myself included, or have synesthesia, have all sorts of different things. I'm having such a laugh with what they're reporting, because it's exactly what I'm going through, these overwhelming smells now. And like what used to be a hologram visit is like a solid individual in front of them. Wow. Like their game has been seriously upped,
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, this is interesting. And nobody's afraid so much as they are. Have you gotten the weird thing where you're smelling cigarette smoke everywhere? Yes. Well, the doctor said it's because COVID messed up my sinuses. Please. Then everybody would have that.
Yeah.
It's just this amazing way that the people who are already kind of vibing in that space are now dealing with a whole different thing, as if they have one foot in one plane and one in another.
Yeah.
It's like that veil got lifted again, even further. And it's like, now we're looking at this whole kind of interdimensional thing, which was necessary in the evolution of where we're going as people, because the next thing they're going to drop on us is the ETs, which are, call them whatever you want to, guys. They're interdimensional travelers, experiences, the same as you. You're as ET to them as they are to you.
That's true.
It's just that the worlds are colliding. The worlds are coming together. And so in order to get everybody's attention and fear and focused on that, they're going to use all sorts of little fun tricks. You genetically modify a virus, you holographically place a ship, so you're going to see that, that's coming. And then it gets people into the space where when they actually realize, oh, hey, this has been here all along. Right. So it's fun. There's no sense killing off any of us who say it anymore, because there's so many of us.
Yeah, true. That's really true. I love that too, because I think most people are feeling this, like upgrade, if that's what you want to call it, right? Where the veil is thinner and things are coming through. I definitely went through this transformation over this time too, where everything is much brighter and clearer, and, and then all sorts of people. And I think the hardest thing for some people with that is that they believe, oh, not me. You're the special person, or that person is psychic, or this person is the healer, or like, I'm not that. I'm just having some weird experiences or something. But I think, collectively we're going to start to realize, like, this is humanity. It's not special people.
We can all do it.
Yeah, we can all do it. And we can all hopefully bring that forward more and more for exactly what you're describing. Because your discernment sure as hell increases the more you get clear with your real true self, right? And also your ability to help other people get through this as well as yourself. And so I just love that. And I just keep thinking this whole time we're talking, about the fear and the negative vibrations and what's happening that's not perfect in everybody's esteem, but actually is because it serves us. That Howdy McCoskey said this to me once, and I just always loved it. He said, when you're having a bad dream, that's what wakes you up, right? The bad dream is what wakes you up. And like, here's all this stuff happening, and it might feel like turmoil and chaos and negativity and scary and who's in control, da da da. But like you said, well, really the whole time you are. Really the whole time all of this has been true. And really now you're just waking up more and more. And that's a good thing for all of humanity. And I just feel like we're leveling up. So,
oh, absolutely. If you've ever watched footage of somebody, like if there's like a super long roller coaster, and let's say they're terrified and they get on and they're screaming at the top of their lungs, you can only scream for so long, right? And it's and then they go into this, and then they go.
I love that.
Yeah, it's all the same roller coaster. It's all the same journey. But it's like you can only do one thing for so long, until it's just time to move on to the next thing. And all of a sudden, you're moving out of that space of fear, and you're like, okay, well, hang on a second. I'm still here. I'm still in the game. Ooh, can I have some fun with this now? Like I've completely changed my office environment to suit me and to suit my needs. And I have a new secretary who has Tourette's.
That's awesome.
I am living the dream. She's never been in a space where she's been acknowledged or seen for what she is, because, oh no, we couldn't have that dealing with the public. And I'm like, I hired you because of it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because I live in a world of bones and nerves and conditions that, that have no names. And I love the idea of bringing that in and normalizing that and creating an atmosphere where people have to sit in and be normal and okay with it as well. It's incredible. We're having a ball. She's having the time of her life, and I'm just sitting in there, and all I do is laugh because it's just brilliant,
That's so cool.
And it just raises the vibe of the place. And so like it's everything is simply what you make of it.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, so I'm just giving people a new opportunity to make something different of a situation that they might feel uncomfortable with otherwise. Going, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to say? What? And then they want to laugh, and she's like, go on, laugh. It's funny, And it's bringing people out of themselves in a way after, for 2 years they were sitting in there talking about nothing but COVID. And I'm like, let's talk about something else.
Yeah. That's perfect. What you just said could apply to the whole conversation and this whole last 2 years too, right? Like it's giving people this opportunity to create something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
exactly
perfect. Well, I know you might have to go soon, but I want to give you a chance to talk about your other books as well. We did talk about Understanding is the New Healing, which is the best, audiobook ever. But what about your other books, and where can people connect with you and those books and
everything else? Is MaryHelenHensley.com, and all of the books are there as well. And I've got any number of books about life and death, and I have Hugh and the Manatee, which is the first in a series for kids. It educates about the LGBTQ community, because there were people who have kids, myself included, how to, I have a child who didn't see herself in a book growing up. And so I was like, well, you're a writer, go ahead and write it. So I did. And so I've got all sorts of fun little projects going on, but everything I'm doing is at MaryHelenHensley.com.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm gonna pause.
You're overwhelmed with emotion.
I am literally tearing up from coughing.
You did good. You talked for a whole hour. Yay, you. Yay, you.
I'm like, usually for the past 2 days, I've been coughing once and then stopping, and now I just cough like 10 times in a row.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, when you're out in public now, the new thing everybody does is if they cough or sneeze, and they have a story that goes with it. Oh, I don't have COVID, or I don't have this. And I'm like, please just stop.
Like, oh, no, it's just allergies. I swear. Don't burn me at the cross. You're like, yeah.
I know. Yeah. It's mad.
Whew. All right. I know you just told us about Hugh and the Manatee. I kind of missed it myself.
Oh,
But
that's
everyone
okay.
else heard it. And then was there something else? You had something to do with Hollywood?
Yeah, I've got a few things going on.
Okay.
I have a series. I just wrote a screenplay for a series called Cursed Truths.
Ooh.
So I didn't write those books, but I wrote the screenplay, the pilot screenplay on those books. So that's kind of in the works at the moment for a series. And it's really cool. So yeah, I got all sorts of little fun things going on, but they're always there. I'm on Facebook, on Instagram, the usual.
All the places.
And I made my very first TikTok today, and my daughters wouldn't help me put it up because they said they were mortified, and because I just started pole dancing.
That's so rad.
Yeah,
I love it.
it's brilliant because I'm writing
a
musical about pole dancing, and so I went. The only way that I could actually do this is to know how hard it is, and I went in. Oh my God Almighty! I thought, I've been a chiropractor for 25 years. Like I thought I had, tons of upper body strength. It's a whole different set of muscles. I got nothing, so I'm like, just like hanging there. But yeah, it's incredible. So, yeah, maybe you'll see me on TikTok. If somebody, my children will help me. I can't figure that one out.
I'm really bad at it too. I just started doing it not that long ago. We'll have to be TikTok friends and share each other's videos and things.
Yeah, because I don't have any friends. My daughter's like, it took me 2 years to build my following. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't have, like, how come I don't have any views on my video? She's like, you don't have any friends.
You don't have any friends, and you have to share it everywhere. You have to share the link everywhere you already are and have followers. And
Oh
then
my
they can
God.
I know. Pole
But
dancing,
that's it.
though.
I'm basically all things Mary Helen is at maryhelenhensley.com. And I have a YouTube channel as well when I remember to put stuff up. You know how it is.
Yes. And you're going to be doing your own show soon. When is that?
That's what I want to do. Yeah. That's what I want to do. Yeah. It's really the only way to reach
lots of people.
To reach out and to talk. Cause it's like, it's just like what we talked about now. Look, don't get me wrong. The near death and the car accident and the metamorphosis that came from that and the books and everything. I love those stories and I love sharing those stories, but I also like talking about a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So this has been really fun being able to sit here and talk about the fear and that, it's like content. My life is content. That's all I've got is content,
Exactly. Well,
but
and that,
it's all
your
of these
experience
different
of it and your ability, your viewpoint on it and how it connects with everything else is exactly what is also healing for everybody. And I just think that's perfect. That's a perfect way to get it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So stay tuned for that.
Cool. I'm excited about that. And I can't stress enough. I'm sure all of your books are amazing, but Understanding is the New Healing is really just such and anybody.
It's my place.
Yeah. And all the vast majority of people who listen to or connect with this show are listening to it on the podcast. And so you're already out there in the audio world. It's super easy to put this book into your rotation and just listen to a chapter at a time, and you're like, could never regret it. It's going to be amazing for you. So I hope everybody goes and grabs that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, what are your final thoughts that you want to share with people before we say goodbye? I know we've already put so many cherries on top.
I know. We've talked about so many different things. I feel like I've been right around the track. Oh, and I healed myself in the process and came up with my own solutions to my own problems.
Yes. We just got to sprinkle it all in.
We just did. I did a post today on Facebook. It's funny about attention deficit and how I wouldn't change a thing about the fact that, like, if they'd had those drugs in the 70s, I'd have been my goose would have been cooked.
Yeah.
And I am just so glad that just wasn't a thing. So I had a lot of teachers and mentors who supported my weirdness, because I'm like, I've had 47 jobs and I've had, my life has always been moved. I've consistently stayed a doctor. That's the longest gig. That and a mother are the two longest gigs I've had. But I just want to do everything. I love spinning my hand
that's your genius,
to everything. I just have nothing. I have these ideas constantly of different and better ways to get stuff out there to maximize people's experience here. And maximizing an experience doesn't mean it always feels good, but getting them into a space where they can appreciate why it feels the way that it does.
Well,
so
you and I are similar in that. I think, part of what we are doing is we see like the final stage. We're like, here's the goal, right? It's over there. And like, what are the ways that people are going to get there? Like, here's this one, this one, this one. Ooh, that one's really efficient. Let's try that one. And that's why I think you kind of have that like ADD all over the place, all the different things that you like, because you're really seeing that final location that you really want everybody to get to. I think that's how I am.
You're seeing the potential.
Yeah.
ADAD, attention dialed into another dimension.
I love that. That's perfect.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. I really, really appreciate, because like, look, without you, we have no voice, so thank you so much for doing what you do. It's much appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much. I love hearing that. I really love, it's my own delight. Like, I get to connect with geniuses like you and get all of this, input and information and have these beautiful discussions. So right back at you. Thank you for being such an amazing guest. And anything else you want to add?
That's it.
Much love. Well, fellow travelers of the path, this is a beautiful thing, and it has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom according to the soul powered Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, author of Understanding is the New Healing. Mary Helen, thank you again for coming back to Rogue Ways. I'm sure we'll do it again in the future. Awesome. Well, there are dimensions all around us that we are not always aware of. In each is a new thread and a new path. The only one degree to your right is exactly like this one, but perhaps you're wearing a different colored shirt. And the one only 1 degree to your left is exactly like this one, except perhaps you're recovering from a little accident. The sphere of possibilities around you moves exactly 360 degrees laterally and in every plane of that sphere. That's beyond our comprehension and too many degrees to count. Imagine if you just turned 90 degrees laterally while twisting 30 degrees in a spiral. What new life path and time stream would be awaiting you? Truly, the only thing that stops you is your continued attention and imagining of the timeline you believe you're already on. So shift and twist, turn and discover, dream and move, and until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Nasty motherfuckers with a hook and a sickle. Brought to you advertisement, bone plated nickel. Fire rate automatic smash from the get-go. Snack on the whack, fermented flesh disco. Abracadabra, archaic altars don't slabber. Hey, making jabbers, flip reality backwards. Hunting rap nerds, bodyguard collected actors. Munitions are famished, let them feast upon the dapper. Bloody bibs and muddy kicks, feasting on amygdalas. Iron fist, tyrant shit, APO will rip you up. The rhyme rainmaker, Bane style backbreaker. Genghis Khan depleted uranium satellite lasers. Cloaked in anonymity, I know you never heard of me. No rusted tools used for Crowley style surgery.
Dissect a whole set, God body. God taught me to dissect the whole body. When it gets sloppy, I'ma get there. Rhymes rare like steak, get crushed like crates to create 52 states. And it's Baghdad, dusted towels, no rags. Straight melt dash, dust to ash. Turbans while the niggas perkin'. It's on purpose, my service touches the sun's surface. And rainbows touch serpents. My light all night shines so bright. I'm a star for eons, Hollywood's for peons. Cause they try to copy the same shit we on. Hey, I ain't done yet. Lungs depleted and can't breathe, can't believe it. Trying to seek it while trying to peep it. It's a secret. Now you're nobody. Label somebody. Trying to claim John Gotti. It's yours truly, God body.